Oh, I'm live. Okay, so we're doing a thing about criticism and ideology. So, what is this? Wow, got some cool bookmarks. David Harding. What's about? Oh, that's weird. So, let's see how they talk about. But yeah, if you it's in that book. But if you want to learn a little bit about literary criticism, you should read Terry Eagleton. He has this book, Criticism of Ideology, and then he has a general book called Literary Theory. No, yeah, is that what it's called? Literary. It's called Literary Criticism, or I was looking for that one. Let's see. So they don't list his books here, but I should probably. But criticism. I think it has. There's one called Literary Theory. It's kind of a generic title, but let's see what they say. Do they have like a? So he talks about Matthew Arnold and Dietzler. So there, I mean, I mentioned this because a lot of people seem to be like, this is another book I read. This is kind of a general book. So, I mean, just basically, when you read books, there's like different schools of thought. There's genetic criticism, which kind of like, it has to do with the author's intention. What did he intend to mean when he wrote a book? And then the second one was formalism. So that kind of meant like everything's in the text. So when I read these books, I'm more like a formalist. And then there's effective criticism, and which I'd have to read. I'd have to remember. Maybe it has to do with uh, reader response a little bit, and then effective. Let's see. Yeah, just how does it effective criticism? How does it affect the reader? When the through the interaction with the text of readers. It's kind of taking the author's intention and the text itself, and then the reader. So look, the reader response. So and then there's mimetic criticism, which kind of like takes in like so everything's has a historical basis. Like there's psychology, there's history, there's language. And then there's intertextual criticism, which is all books kind of mean things because of other books and stuff. So, and that's so because like Joyce, is pretty important because like he definitely refers to a lot of other literature, but you look at this book and in 324 page 324 you have Derrida, a very early, this is pretty much like the earliest thing. So it's called Structure, Sign, Play in the Discourse, and he did a lecture around 1970, or um, like it was in New York, I think, and they were talking about Claude Levi Strauss and structuralism, and which was a lot of stuff wasn't translated for a while. So like sometimes these, even the essays of Derrida, it took a couple years for it to get translated. So people would hear about structuralism and things, and Claude Levi Strauss and Roland Barthes, but you wouldn't read the books till like maybe 5 years later or something. So when so as at this like I think let's see. Oh yeah. Okay. So John. Oh yeah. Johns Hopkins University in 1966. So they talked about structuralism, and immediately Derrida kind of like gave his kind of critique of structuralism, why it's not really doesn't really work. So there was always some interesting sentences in here. Okay, so perhaps something has occurred in the history of the concept of structure that could be called an event if this loaded word did not entail a meaning which is precisely the function of the structural or the structuralist thought to reduce or to suspect. But let me use the word event anyway, employing it with caution and as if in quotation marks. In this sense, this event will have an exterior form of a rupture and a redoubling and blah, blah, blah. But there's like one sentence. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay. So he's talking. Okay, so this event I called a rupture. The disruption I allude at the beginning of the paper would presumably have come when the structurality of the structure had begun to be thought. That is to say, repeated. And this is why I said that this disruption was repetition in all the sentences of the word. Okay, so then we get this sentence here, and pay close attention, everybody. It goes like this. From then on, it became necessary to think the law which governed, as it were, the desire for the center in the constitution of the structure and the process of signification, prescribing its displacements and its substitutions for this law of the central presence, but a central presence which was never itself, which has always already been transported outside itself in its surrogate. And then he goes on to say the surrogate does not substitute itself for anything which has somehow pre-existed it. From then on, it was probably necessary to begin to think that there was no center, that this center could. So, I mean, he's criticizing. He's saying that all somebody's sending me a message here. But what he's saying is that all thought, philosophy. Mostly, he's talking about philosophy and ways of criticism are a system of thought that are centered in truth, are centered in a logos, but somehow the logos is outside of it, So, I mean, when I first read this sentence, it's kind of like, it was kind of like, I think he was attacking like a kind of Platonic idea of a kind of of a kind of a meta narrative that where you couldn't really the center was somehow outside of the system of thought. So the thought of the thought of philosophy, or criticism or religion even, and somehow the center or logos was not accessible, and somehow was. And to me that just kind of like just I just had this feeling when I read this, and I read it again and again. I go, what, whoa, he's basically, I mean, he's not. So, and then getting back to, what he's doing is he's kind of like just criticizing the idea of a logos, that kind of like a Platonic pure forms can kind of somehow exist outside the human realm. And and getting back to Eagleton and his other book, Literary Criticism, he kind of goes through all the different, the genetic, the reader response, the formalist, and he is Terry Eagleton's a Marxist, but he goes through all the things, and he kind of like says that there's not one. He kind of, at the end of the book, he kind of goes in this thing where he goes, there's not one criticism that's better than the others. They all exist in their own way. And I mean, I wish I would have kind of like read a little bit of this book before I started this video, but I mean, so I think a lot of people like are kind of talking about Derrida and philosophy, and his. I mean, he's kind of like talking about. He's kind of talking about previous philosophers, like like a Platonic idea and some of the meta narratives that kind of existed before, and he's saying that these meta narratives and these explanations of reality are just sort of like just concepts, and they're not the age of enlightenment. They're just all those ideas of forms and or just are just certain unknowable ideas that and and I guess he's sort of like unplugging reality from truth and just kind of having a sort. And he talks about he uses the words rupture and other things that I've used myself, and I think he's talking about it's very unclear, and I think that's at the heart of deconstruction is that there's some things that are humans kind of know, and we have the philosophy and the the real moral structures or whatever that kind of guide reality and perceive how we perceive reality, and like these all everything's like kind of like even words and the spaces between words is on shaky grounds, and I think that was like probably really apparent in the 60s, because that was like a really shifting, and not only are they talking kind of attacking Plato and Aristotle, but they're also kind of like picking up where Nietzsche left off, and they are Nietzschean, and they are there's Heidegger and Husserl that were early 20th century thinkers, and they got in like literary criticism, which was kind of like something that we all kind of talked about in the humanities in the 70s and 80s. It doesn't seem like it's like very you just have all these wackos like talking about it, like they've read, I think they've maybe read a Wikipedia page or something. They haven't really read the books, and just I don't know. I'm just, but literary criticism is like something that's very important. It's I'm aware of those books, and I've going back to these books and these thinkers and these guys, these readers, and there used to be, Harold Bloom, Terry Eagleton. I mean, even if you disagree with them, I mean, they were like great readers and knew stuff about literature. Okay, so we're going to end there, and we're going to get back to James Joyce and some of these other fine writers.